So when you garden, and in life in general, embrace the imperfection. Good morning. In my garden with my coffee, as I am most mornings that I have the opportunity. And just a couple thoughts for the day. One, I have a pea up in my garden. I'm going to show you. This right here is one of my fall peas are up. I only have a couple up. There's a whole bunch in this space here. So, when you're gardening, there's a process. It's sometimes more of an art than a science. For instance, to fix that, when I planted these basil plants right here, they looked horrible. I was fairly certain they were not going to grow, they were not going to produce, that I had completely screwed up. I had let them get too leggy in the pot. I had disturbed the roots too much when I transplanted them. I had failed. I have a ton of pesto in the freezer from these plants that I was fairly certain were going to fail. And I actually really need to do a harvest and make some more pesto or dry it or something. And that's one thing. I need to work on drying my herbs. It's one of those things at the beginning of every year, I'm like, I'm going to dry a lot of my oregano and basil so I don't have to buy it. And then I get to the end of the season and I just don't. It's one of those things, I'm not comfortable with it because I'm never 100% sure I have it dry enough. And I'm afraid I'm just going to put it in a container and it's going to mold. So that's one of those analysis paralysis kind of things. I don't do it because I'm afraid of screwing it up. I still do that. So embrace imperfection and sometimes let things go. It'll be just fine. This year, I think I'm going to get a fantastic dry bean harvest from my pole beans. My winter squash, not so much. They looked great early, but the vine borers got me. So I'm going to have a couple delicata. I'm going to have a couple of this giant winter squash. And the winner here is I have a mini winter squash or mini butternut squash. Let's go take a look. These guys are kind of little, but I think they're going to be really nice just for throwing together a meal like on a weeknight because they're not going to be too much to handle. Now, this other squash that I've been growing, this is the only one that's this size. I have a few that are little. Something with this type of squash, it just seems to abort a lot of fruit. I don't know if it's my soil. I don't know if I plant it too tight. I tried this year to make sure I went down to just one plant because I'd plant a couple seeds and I went back to one plant in each one. I don't know what it is. It's delicious. It obviously produces a lot when you get one because last year I had one like this and it was like 12 pounds. And then there's a few little ones that I hope finish out because that will be a nice amount, but it's not going to be kind of what I hope for designating that amount of space to winter squash. But I'm hoping the sweet potatoes that are here and here and there and here make up for the winter squash. So, you know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you learn in the process. So the winter squash did better. Like my squash bugs and cucumber beetles were significantly less this year than previous years. Not 100% sure why. I published a video a while ago on a theory on that I'm going to kind of continue. But we'll see. I don't know. So I'm hoping sweet potatoes make up for butternut, like not getting a ton of butternut squash because sometimes I can use either one in recipes. And actually, sweet potatoes are a little easier to use. It's not as much process to seed and cut the skin off and all of that. So, we'll see. Also, sometimes you plant things too close and the pole beans completely eat one of your tomato plants. There's a tomato plant in there. There's tomatoes on it still. It's being completely consumed by the pole beans. Again, that's one of those things. It's going to be fine. Also, just the learning process. Like right now, this right here is a carrot that overwintered. I want to collect the seed. This looks like it's pretty close to being ready to collect the seed, but I am not 100% sure, so I'm going to let it go a little further. But like right there, let's see. That looks like carrot seed, doesn't it? So, not 100% sure, but I think I have probably many packets worth of carrot seeds in those blossoms. So that could be a win, as long as they germinate. Also, something that I learned this year, mainly because like almost all of my radishes just bolted on me because it was kind of a weird spring. I learned that the seed pods taste like mini radishes. They don't necessarily taste great on top of your coffee, but they're a nice little snack. They'd be great on a salad. I'm going to try sauteing them at some point and see how that works. So it's something to think about that. When you plant a radish, you get, one. This, like this whole space, this one's still working on producing its seed pods. But that, all of those, I think here too, is produced by one plant. So if you let your radish bolt and then eat the seed pods, you're getting significantly more food than just eating one radish. So I just learned that this year. I've been gardening for 20 years, almost. So there's always room to grow. There's always successes. There's always failures. Failures are opportunities for growth. And there's always the next growing season. So right now, putting stuff in for fall. Some of it's germinated, some of it hasn't. We're working on expanding the garden. We're kind of slowing our chickens down on the other side of the pole beans. Typically we move them 2 or 3 times a day. We're just moving them once a day. So they're starting to, one, put more manure in one space and then digging it up a little bit more. And we're going to kind of do that a few times and then cover it in brown paper from our feed bags and mulch it for the winter. And in the spring we can just plant in it. So that's exciting. So when you garden and in life in general, embrace the imperfection, embrace the wildness of it that takes over your pathways to make it so you can't get through your garden, but there's much beauty in the process. And thank you for joining me.